Hey everyone, Galactic Storyteller, back with the long-awaited part 2 of our interview with Cody Snodgres, retired Black Ops. He is going to be going over some information today with us regarding the real deal on Waco. So what I'm going to do is introduce him, let him introduce himself actually with what he's been up to, and then we're going to go right into the information. Are you there, Cody?
Yeah, Madeline, we're here. How you doing there?
I'm good. I'm good. Just letting the viewers know that because of your situation, you're currently underground. So we're going to do the interview just like we did last time. We'll have your voice. Is that fine?
That sounds great. Appreciate it.
All right. Perfect. So what have you been up to since part 1?
We've been doing interviews all around the world. September 11th, we got a lot of calls. On September 10th, we did five and a half hours of interviews, which was a lot for one day. It really fried you. And then September 11th, we did a live thing up in the World Trade Center there in New York, but we couldn't get the equipment up on top of the Freedom Tower, so it didn't go so good there. But no, we've just been doing a lot of information interviews, trying to get the truth out and trying to wake people up to the fact that there is this big shadow government. And a lot of people, we just did another interview today, and the guys were asking, what do you think is going to happen like the next false flag? There was all this latest stuff, the assassinations in the 60s, with John Kennedy's brother Robert and Martin Luther King, of course. And then in the 90s, there was this spate of activity like Ruby Ridge, the shootout up in Idaho, and then the Waco fiasco, and then the Murrah building bombing, and so forth. And then, 9/11, of course, in 2001. And then we started seeing in this last decade here all the school shootings, Parkland school shooting, Sandy Hook, Mandalay Bay, all of these different shootings. And we've been trying to isolate the patterns of these false flag events. Not all of them are false flags, but a great number of them are once you start digging into them. Mm-hmm. And we try to isolate the patterns and then show the patterns to people so that they can wake up and not be deceived or tricked by the media stunts and the shenanigans of the New World Order and the Deep State, CIA, and all these intelligence agencies who can manufacture events at their whim.
Do you see a difference in people's consciousness? Are they waking up?
Yes. Like I said, we do interviews in mostly English-speaking countries around the world. But like in Ireland, we talk to the radio show hosts or TV show hosts off the air, and England, Spain, Sweden, Norway. I just got some emails today from Norway, and we have some people over in Tel Aviv. We're trying to schedule some interviews in Israel now. But there are, Madeline, there are people waking up, and there's censorship, of course, like in China, the Chinese-style censorship, and Google and Facebook are all part of that. And they're applying these AI, artificial intelligence algorithms, all around the world. And I know you've seen censorship, like your view numbers, going backwards, mm-hmm. which is an impossibility. and they're trying all the censorship. But yes, people are waking up, and I think that's why we're seeing this big push in censorship. The New World Order people, the shadow government people that want to control the whole world and every country in it, they're doing everything they can, shadow banning, the whole thing, to combat this waking up. People are hungry for information, especially over in Europe. A lot of the younger people, they're tired of the EU and all of the stale politics that's been going on over there, and they're looking for answers. And there is awakening, and what we hopefully will be a part of, is trying to provide what we see as the truth. You know, I don't have all the answers about everything, but I do know certain things that I was involved in. And I've waited like 22 years to tell the story about the Murrah building and Waco and all these other things. So hopefully there'll be more people step forward and more incidents of whistleblowers and truth tellers that'll feed this wave of people waking up. Because if we don't wake up, Madeline, I think we're all in some deep trouble.
Well, I think most Americans, most people understand that freedom isn't free, but neither is truth. And you're paying a price. Those of us who are out there spreading the truth, and you to a greater degree, you pay a price for standing behind the truth and trying to help people come to a better understanding of what's going on with the shadow government.
Right. And, you know, there's a lot of whistleblowers. Like, oftentimes when we do shows, we'll quote the IIPA, the Intelligence Identities Protection Act. That's passed in 1982 here in the U.S. And one of our CIA case officers, John Kiriakou, he was sentenced to 30 months in federal prison. That was back in January 2013. For blowing the whistle on the CIA's RDI program. That's the Rendition, Detention, and Interrogation Program. And he inadvertently let slip an active agent's name. And you can't do that when intelligence personnel are active. And so they used it to hammer him, of course, to shut him up, and he paid a price. And then, you know, William Binney, the NSA guy, of course, Eric Snowden, he had to leave the U.S. He's over in Moscow now, last I heard. But, yeah, we all pay a price. And some people pay the ultimate price, like Philip Marshall or Michael Hastings, and some of these other journalists, Gary Webb, you know, that supposedly committed suicide with 2 bullets to his head and so forth. So, yeah, there's a price, but, you know, it's worth it. When you stand in the light and you stand in the truth, it is a wonderful feeling of freedom where you can speak it. And, yeah, we all have fear about speaking out, but I've been dead twice. I died twice in the hospital, and I had the classic near-death experience. And I know what death is like. I know that we are spiritual beings of light, and we leave these earthly bodies of flesh, you know, when we die, but our spirits never die. And like it says in Luke in the Bible, you know, you can kill a person's body, but you can't harm their soul. And so we're here to spread the light and be the light and hold it here down on the earth. The dark ones, they live with deceit and treachery, and they hide and they con people and trick people and deceive people with their carefully crafted deceptions. And we're here to expose them and bring the light to them. And, you know, you have to step up over your fear of death and realize there's bigger things going on here. It's not just your life. It's the lives of all the children and the grandchildren. And if we don't stand up for truth, then what kind of world are we going to be handing down?
Absolutely. Our silence is consent. When we do nothing, when we say nothing, that gives them permission to continue on with their nefarious and Luciferian ways, and it has to stop. And I don't know if the viewers can truly appreciate, I don't know if anyone can, the work that you're doing. You're spending 3, 4, 5, 10 hours a day doing interviews and working to get this information out there. So I appreciate you being willing to come on with me today for part 2.
Well, I appreciate your time and your work, and we there's none of us are above each other. You know, we're all brothers and sisters, you know, standing together in the light. We're all warriors of light, regardless of what your thing is or what your position is. And everyone does their little part.
Absolutely.
And we're facing a great organized deception. This New World Order is a great organized deception designed to trick us into giving our power away and designed to fragmenting our consciousnesses through fear. And they keep us picking at each other with all these little divisions and arguing at each other over all this trivial stuff, while meanwhile in the background they're secretly, slowly consolidating their grip over the whole world. And it's happening right in front of our face, this 5G thing. And I mean, I could go on and on with all of it. The geoengineering and the chemtrails are spraying them worldwide.
Do you want to talk about 5G a little bit?
Yeah, we could. We could talk. We can do a series of interviews when there's time. But we can talk about Waco, 5G, anything. Yeah, the thing that we do on some of the shows, you know, over in Europe, Madeline, the people are jammed up. You know, we have the luxury here in America. We have a lot of space around us.
Mm-hmm.
And people in Europe are all kind of small. They're jammed up and crowded together. And so they have something over there called ESS. It's electromagnetic sensitivity syndrome. And people that get around cell phone towers are too close to real powerful fluorescent lights, for instance, they start having physiological symptoms like headaches and neck aches and dizziness, confusion, so forth. And this new 5G that's coming has the potential to damage biology. It has potential neurological effects. It has potential physical, mental, and even spiritual effects. They call it, they're millimeter wave health effects. And they use beamforming and a variety of things. And when this thing all comes online, it has the potential to be weaponized.
And they're using it for fertility purposes as well, because that is going on. People put laptops on their laps. They give children little iPads right next to their reproductive organs, and it's killing the eggs that these little girls have. It's killing the little sperm that these young toddlers have. And they don't know, according to Barry Trower in the UK, how many generations this infertility can be carried on. Is that correct?
Right. This is a new technology, okay? And if you'll just bear with me here, these are some technical terms, and we'll reduce them down. They have two basic waveforms in the 5G. It's a real compressed microwave frequency. What they're selling it to the public, they're saying, it's roughly from 30 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz. And giga means a billion. And a hertz is a cycle per second. It's a measurement of waves and how they cycle. So 1 hertz is 1 cycle per second. So when you look at a 300 gigahertz, that's 300 billion cycles per second. So as you can see, Madeline, it's a real small waveform. And what they're selling it, they're saying, 5G will decrease download speeds by 10 gigabytes a second, and you can download a full HD high definition movie, in seconds, and better load times, and it'll be 3 times to 10 times faster than 4G, and so forth and so on. But this technology has not been tested. And the new waveforms they're going to use for 5G, there's 2 of them. There's CP-OFDM, and that stands for Cyclic Prefix Orthogonal Frequency Division Multiplexing. And the other waveform is the DFT-SOFDM, and that's Discrete Fourier Transform Spread Orthogonal Frequency Division Multiplexing. And that's a big bunch of fancy $10 words. But what it means is they take a basic microwave and compress it down into this 5G real high gigahertz range, and then they put carrier waves in it. So it has a multiplicity of other electromagnetic waves in the basic microwave. And so this thing has the potential to damage and cause ionizing radiation, which can damage biological systems. An example, there was something called Eclipse, EKLIPSE. That was an EU, European Union funded review body that was dedicated to policies on impacts on biodiversity and ecosystems. And they looked at 97 studies on how electromagnetic radiation can affect the environment. And their conclusion was that, this EM radiation could indeed pose a potential risk. And 5G employs three basic ranges. There's a low range, which is 0.6 gigahertz to 3.7 gigahertz. There's a mid-range, 3.7 gigs to 24 gigs. And then the high range is 24 gigs to 300. And in the U.S. here, in our country, Madeline, the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, they have put this as an unlicensed spectrum from 61 gigahertz to 71 gigahertz. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but they've already voted on it. It's already been passed. So from 61 gigs to 71 gigs, that frequency is open to anybody. That means telecom companies, private people, intelligence agencies, Army, FBI, police. Anyone can use this higher gigahertz. It's a 10 gigahertz range they left open. And so what this does, it allows for the weaponization of this 5G technology because it's unregulated. It's an unregulated band of wavelength. And so all kinds of weapons can be produced with this, and they can cause a variety of symptoms like nausea, dizziness, all kinds of things. You may recall in the Boston bombing, they had, later on they showed those big black MRAPs,
Mm-hmm.
those, and they had the little satellite dish things on them.
Mm-hmm.
On top, some people saw those. Well, those were things, devices that could use microwaves to cause crowd dispersion. They can cause your skin to heat up to 120 degrees, and just make you want to run away, and so forth and so on. So they weaponized this stuff. And this 5G network is a whole nother Pandora's box of weaponization. It's a whole nother way that seemingly innocent telecom improvements can be used covertly and clandestinely to even kill people or hurt them.
So if I understand what you're saying correctly, basically they can scramble your brain and all your systems and they can disrupt your neurological function.
Exactly. Some of the side effects of this type of technology is DNA, single and double strand breaks in your DNA, oxidative damage. For instance, oxidative damage can occur. When you breathe air, Madeline, there's oxygen, O2, and that bonds to the hemoglobin in your blood with iron. And this radiation at certain frequencies is so high and so fine, it can actually interfere with the covalent bonds of oxygen in the hemoglobin in your blood. And so it's so small and so fast, and at certain amplitudes, it can actually burst capillaries. So there's a lot of ways this can be, weaponized. And it's just that people need to be aware that these telecom companies, this stuff affects cell growth rates. It affects bacteria resistance. It can affect your heart. There was a 1992 Russian study that found the frequencies in the range of 53 to 78 gigahertz. That impacted the heart rate in rats. That it made their heart have arrhythmias. And so there's all kinds of stuff. There was another 2002 Russian study that examined the effects of 42 gigahertz microwave radiation on the blood of healthy mice. And these things did affect their immune systems. And so when you get down to, you got to remember this stuff, Madeline, has never been used before. It's our biological systems, cats, dogs, people, fish, birds. We have all evolved on this planet without all this new microwave and artificial intelligence technology. And so now they're proposing to put these 5G systems out everywhere, which is about 400 to 500 feet. And when you're in a city, the 5G waveform is so high frequency that it gets attenuated as it transmits through a non-homogeneous medium like the air. And so the beam starts spreading out and losing, it degrades, it has signal degradation. And so every 400 to 500 feet, they have to put these little 5G transmitters. And they have, the wavelengths are real small. They have a lot of antennas. They can be a few nanometers in length, the antennas for these things. And so they can put 100 of these antennas in what they call phased arrays, antenna elements. You imagine a 1 nanometer, antenna, and then you put 100 of them together in a pattern, like a sphere or a circle or a star or whatever they're doing. And then you put these repeater boxes with these antennas in them every 400 or 500 feet. And it's putting out a grid of electromagnetic energy. And so any creature, like a bird that flies through it or a human that walks through it, this stuff is going to be affecting the neurology, the psychology, the physiology of our biological organisms. And the telecom companies say, oh, this is great, you get better download speeds and all this. The question is, as you alluded to earlier, how does this stuff affect us long term? And nobody knows this answer. No, this has never been tried before. It's never been done before.
What about those with pacemakers?
Exactly.
So we just don't know. We don't know anything.
Right.
Wow.
And so they're also talking about sending these 5G signals down from satellites. This stuff can disrupt cell metabolism. It can change the melatonin output in the pineal gland. It can disrupt brain glucose metabolism. It can also alter generation of the stress proteins. And so there's a whole area of this electrosmog or electropollution. When you add in this new 5G with the pre-existing cell phones in an area, which operated approximately 840 megahertz, and then you add in all the different TV stations, then the FM radio stations, then the AM radio stations, and all of this makes an electrosmog or electro soup. We can't see it with our eyes, but people that have ESS, electromagnetic sensitivity syndrome, I'm one of them, they feel it. And what happened to me, Madeline, is back in the 1980s, I was a petroleum geophysicist at Amoco Production Company. After I got out of graduate school, I went to work as a petroleum geophysicist, and that was my front for Black Ops. But while I was in those buildings, we worked with huge floors of IBM 3033 mainframe computers, and we had these big cables, of all this electricity running through the building all the time. And back then I was young and ignorant, and I didn't know about all this, but I worked in there, month after month, year after year, and I was subjected to these huge, powerful electromagnetic fields. And now later on in life, I'm very sensitive to it. When I go to a Walmart and I walk in, with the fluorescent lights and stuff, I start getting a headache. I start feeling uneasy. I can definitely feel it when I drive by big cell phone towers up on a hill and you can see them. I feel them. I get a headache. And those big 124 kilovolt power lines, the big tall tower electric line that go across, when I get under those things, I get a weird kind of buzzy feeling in my ears, and I feel like someone's scraping a chalkboard or something. And that's ESS. Anyone who's been exposed to high level of radiation, like radar operators on an aircraft carrier, and you sit there day after day in front of those great big radar towers that spin around, and you get beamed with that stuff, it has effects that have been called ESS, and it's real. It's absolutely real.
It is. I can't go into Best Buy. It is so electromagnetically toxic in there. I can't do it. If I go by the electronics section in Walmart, Same exact thing. And, you know, since you and I started talking, I started getting like a headache in my frontal lobe. I can feel a buzzing in there. And as an empath, I don't know if I'm just picking up a headache that you might have or what, but it started since you and I started this conversation, just right in my frontal lobe.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I've had a headache all day, and we've been doing lots of interviews and everything like that, and I'm still recovering from when we got hit in the car wreck back in December 21st, 2017. I think that was a hit that was done on me, you know, to shut me up, but I can't prove it.
Right.
But all the cars were completely totaled, and I was messed up, and I'm still have headaches, and I'm going to see a neurologist here in October, and they're doing the EMG test, which measures nerve velocity in both my arms out of my neck. So I had a severe concussion and a severe whiplash and all that stuff. But anyway, yeah. So I'm used to headaches a lot. I get them a lot. But anyway, the point with this 5G is people can Google this stuff up if they're interested. But like with the smart meters on the electric poles, the telecom companies are just slowly starting this. Most Americans probably won't see the full impact of this till 2019, which is only a few months away. But they're going to move forward and just start putting this stuff up. And they're not going to say much to anybody. That's why we tell people, watch your area around your house. If you see a weird van come up there and guys start doing stuff, go out there and take a picture of their license plate. Go out there and talk to them, ask them, so what are you doing? What are you installing? What kind of stuff is this? You know, get their names. Make them feel uncomfortable. These people that are doing this stuff are used to operating in the shadows and nobody looking at them, and they blend in, and they just pull up and do this stuff. But once they get all this installed, Madeline, we could have a whole generation of pets, cats, dogs, people that start developing early onset leukemia or early onset cancer, or various types, like you said, of reproductive disorders from having these new 5G cell phones and laptops, you know, right over, set on our laps. They have antennas right by the battery pack. If you look at them, they come right out the bottom. They're pointed straight at your genitals. And a lot of girls I know, they carry, sometimes they'll put their iPhone 6, you know, down in their bra and carry it around and listen to their playlist. Or they'll put them down in their rear pocket. And a lot of guys I know, they put them in their front pockets. And those are sending radiation straight to their testicles. And this can have long-term, you know, month after month, year after year. There's no telling where this is going to lead in our society. It's an untested technology.
You know, that's absolutely correct. And just for the record, you know, my husband works in radiation oncology. He plans the radiation treatments that people go through when they've got cancer and so forth. And you can see the outline of the cell phone on breast tissue where women have shoved their phones into their bras, and you can literally see the cell phone outline in the tissue. And so that's, I never put my cell phone next to my ear. I put either speakers on, the speaker on, or I put headphones in, because he's also seen, especially on the left side of the head, a temporal cancer coming in right where you would put your cell phone next to your ear. So please, viewers, stop doing these things.
Exactly. You can get a phone and get a long set of earbuds. And the further away you keep a cell phone from your head or your vital organs, the better off you're going to be. Madeline, I got rid of my cell phones. I quit. I just quit the whole thing because I do have ESS, electromagnetic sensitivity syndrome, and when I hold phones close to my head, I get physical headaches, and I feel sometimes dizzy, fused, a little bit of nausea sometimes. And I also wanted to tell Madeline, a lot of people don't realize this in America, but years ago when they first started the cell phones, and now we're using a 4G version, this whole technology technology, when it was set up by the telecom companies, and they started putting up all these towers everywhere. And pretty soon, there were just towers almost everywhere you went. You could see one. And they're trying to blanket the whole area, the whole United States with them. And they say, well, it's for coverage for your cell phone. Well, that's true, but secretly, FEMA has been in this loop, and they know that these cell phones operate at approximately 840 megahertz, and that just so happens to be the resonant frequency of the human cranium. And so they have learned how to use 840 megahertz signals and then put carrier signals in them. And these things can make you sick or nauseous or lose your will to fight. And in times of national emergency, our civilian telecom microwave towers, all the equipment on them, Madeline, can be converted over to crowd control. And so this is all very real technology. And now with the 5G, God knows what DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or the Pentagon, or any number of covert government elements like the NSA or the CIA, who traditionally operate in blackness and darkness. Many of their programs, Congress doesn't even know about them. What are they going to do with this technology? And then what are they going to do with this range of frequencies that I talked about before that goes, from 61 to 71 gigahertz?
Those are scary implications.
Yes, ma'am, because it's unregulated. There's no regulation in that frequency range at all. And we've been telling this to people on various interviews when we talk about 5G, but people need to wake up now, okay, and do some research for yourself. Don't believe me. Just go look, Google. A lot of this stuff is out there now. The classified stuff and the weaponization of it, that stuff's all classified down at Los Alamos or DARPA or wherever they're doing it. But this stuff is very real.
The other thing I wanted to add to that is parents, please do not give these cell phones to your children. What he was talking about with the frequencies of the brain, these little ones, their skull is not fully formed till after 3 years old, the density of the bone. So those frequency waves are going right into these little children's thin skulls, and they are damaging their brain tissue, and it's designed that way. So do not give these cell phones and devices to your kids and let them put it up next to their very, very thin skulls.
That's a great point. The human brain, Madeline, has a bunch of magnetite in it naturally. It's naturally occurring. And that magnetite is used in a variety of brain functions, an endocrine system function, like the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, the amygdala, pineal gland, and so forth. And magnetite absorbs microwave frequencies at approximately 12 gigahertz, okay? And so when you have these 5G waveforms operating in that band, it affects the magnetite particles in our brains. Now, how does all that affect our psychology and our neurology and our physiology? We do not know. Our science simply does not know that. But they're going after the frequency that your brain is assigned to shield things from. It's, when you have a Y gig, that's the 60 gigahertz field. Every molecule, has a specific absorption frequency. And oxygen, the oxygen molecule O2 that we breathe and is necessary for all life, not only human beings, but birds and dogs and cats and everything. Guess what? The oxygen absorption frequency is 60 gigahertz. And remember what I told you about the FCC?
Yes.
They opened that up at 61 gigahertz to 71 gigahertz. So this oxygen absorption frequency of 60 gigs is real close to this open frequency band. And O2 binds to hemoglobin, and this can alter the way oxygen binds in our blood. And this could be weaponized to make people, you could slowly be breathing, but you're not uptaking oxygen. And you could slowly suffocate to death, and not even know it. If the right fields at the right amplitude and modulated around the right frequency, if this stuff happened. And then the Y gigs, those fields are 2.4 gigahertz, and they oscillate, 2.4 billion times a second. And this frequency is very close to what the water molecule, H2O, begins to rotate on its axis. If you just took a water molecule sitting out in space and you turn this 2.4 gigahertz field on around it, it'll start naturally rotating. Okay? And here's the question. How much of our human body is made of water?
75% plus.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So what happens if they turn one of these fields on? It's been weaponized around 2.4 gigahertz and then modulated or phase conjugated with some other microwave carrier waves or so forth. And they could actually affect the water in your body. They can make the water heat up. There's all kinds of things that this can be used for, is the point I'm trying to make. The telecom companies won't talk about it. It's AT&T and Verizon. All they're going to want to do is have everyone sign up for their new 5G program and then get them a new iPhone 7 or iPhone 8 or whatever new Android device is coming out. And they'll have a ready-made market, and then they'll start dropping off the 4G and the old 3G, and none of them will work anymore,
Mm-hmm.
And everything will be converted into this frequency, and it's almost like the mark of the beast. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all the old devices won't work. If you want on the internet or you want to talk to your friends on Facebook, you're going to have to be in this 5G system. And so it has a potential for great technological advancement, but on the other hand, it has the potential for great technological control. It's just like DDT, they sprayed tomatoes with it,
Mm-hmm.
back in the 60s, 70s, and touted it as a great chemical. And it killed the bugs and increased farmers' yields and so forth. But then it took 13 years for that chemical to run through the hydrological cycle and then made the eagle's eggs, our bald and golden eagle's eggs, fragile. So we saw a big decline in our eagle populations. Mm-hmm. That was from that thing they touted as so good and so great. It was great for DuPont and all their stockholders and Dow Chemical, but it was horrible for the environment.
Yeah. Wow. That's really incredible. When you were talking about the lack of oxygen, what happens, people, is when your cells do not have oxygen, they die. Whether that's brain cells, there's something called apoptosis. That's when the cells of your body die, and if they do not have oxygen, that's just what happens. So you can get that happening in lung tissue, reproductive tissue, your endocrine system, brain tissue, everything. If you don't have that oxygen, your cells will die, and it is just that simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's that simple.
No, it is simple. And all these frequencies are, water molecules,
Mm-hmm.
Oxygen molecules.
Mm-hmm.
840 megahertz is where the natural resonance frequency of the brain. That's
Mm-hmm.
the old Ford stuff. The point I'm trying to make is they're not just picking this stuff at random. This stuff
is deliberate.
Can also be weaponized on top of being a telecom gem.
It's heartbreaking. I'm listening to this going, they know what they're doing and it's deliberate. It's criminal.
Well, the New World Order, and the bankers, the Rothschild family and all those guys, when you start studying all of it in
Mm-hmm.
history, they are responsible for many of the wars, and the bankers don't control that. I mean, they don't care about a particular conflict. They don't care who wins it, France or Germany or whoever. They don't care about the ideology, whether it's capitalism or communism. Bankers care about control. They don't care about the debt that a conflict produces. They care I mean, they care about the debt that the conflict produces, not the conflict itself. That's what I'm trying to say.
Because they're usually funding both sides, so they don't care.
And not only do they fund both sides, like the Rothschilds' sons did over in Europe, you know, between France and Spain when they fought their wars, and England and so forth. Their sons were head of the banks in each country.
Mm-hmm.
And then they loaned the militaries of each country money at interest. And then they fought a big war and they destroyed a bunch of stuff. Then they loaned them more money, Madeline, to rebuild it all. So they make money two ways off of war. First, by loaning money to build up all the weapons and armaments. Then after the destruction occurs and one side or the other wins, they control them through debt. Then they loan that side more money and the other side more money to rebuild the infrastructure. And so they don't care about the conflict. They care about the debt that the conflict produces. That's why people have asked me around the world, do you think there'll be another world war? And I think there will be. I think we're going to have a World War III one day, and the bankers will be behind it because they make too much money at war. I mean, look how long we've been in Afghanistan, 15 years. Look how long we were in Vietnam. I got friends that were over there say it was a corporate war, you know.
Mm-hmm. I've said for a long time, there's no money in peace.
Right, and the Rothschilds and all these telecom companies, you know, they're behind the ownership. They're the richest family in the world, and they're behind a lot of the ownership of the telecoms and all this stuff. So this new technology can be looked at as the mark of the beast, mm-hmm. you know, as they talk Revelation 12 or so forth. You know, it's something that they're trying to push. It's something they're trying to go to, and it'll form an electronic control grid in these smart cities. If people get herded like cattle into these new Agenda 21 smart cities and so forth, this 5G thing will be their method of control.
And they've got you electromagnetically trapped.
It's an electronic fence. And then they're with all their censorship, yeah, we can download, you know, movies and information 3 to 10 times faster than the old 4G system. But what is that information? It also gives them the power through artificial intelligence to control that information 3 to 10 times faster.
You have to look at the other side of the equation, and I think most people don't realize that there is one.
Yeah, if they have 10 times faster download speeds, then that gives them 10 times faster ability to censor things.
Mm-hmm.
So the information you do get, while it is coming in real fast and you're tricked and deceived into thinking you're getting a really good download real quick, the content of the information's already been doctored by the time you get it.
And that's the real agenda behind the whole setup of 5G in the first place. I guarantee you, these communication companies do not care about you getting your movie streamed faster. Just like Obama phones were not there because he cares about you staying in connection with your family. These are tracking, recording devices, and there's an agenda behind it. That's what we're looking at today.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. It's organized a section, but what we hope, and I'm glad, you know, you do your shows like you do, because every little bit helps. Every person helps. It's what we're facing, you know, right now is a lot of apathy. You know, we try to wake people up and tell them, look what's going on right here. Helen Keller said, we may have found a cure for many evils, but we have found no remedy for the worst evil of them all, and that's the apathy of the human being. And so many people are apathetic now, and they think this is all a bunch of conspiracy talk and BS, but that's why we tell people, please Google this stuff up yourself. Mm-hmm. Please don't listen to us. Please look for yourselves and open your eyes. All we're doing is trying to, you know, it's like a bunch of horses in a pasture. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But we can sure sit on the fence, Madeline, me and you, and Dammegard and all the other guys, and open that gate up and start hollering, go, look, there's the water.
I have a solution for that little saying, and that is give them salt.
Yeah, no kidding.
So here's your salt, folks.
Exactly.
All right, so let's go into Waco. I've been wanting to cover this topic for a while. Are you good discussing that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, what do we need to know? Where do we start?
Well, yeah, Waco, for those that, some people weren't even born back then, but that was February 28th of 1993. And a brief overview, I have it in my book. We have a section of this. I was in Operation Stingray, DEA ATF Operation Stingray, with one of the ATF agents that was down there at Waco. And then another guy was a friend of mine named Ron Cole, and I'll tell his story. But that happened February 28th of 93. And the government, of course, put out their own version of what happened. And the version I'm going to tell you is from a Branch Davidian that was down there. And after their standoff, that went to April 19th, 1995, when it ended, and there was 54 dead, 21 of which were children. And it was a big fiasco, but the American people were lied to horribly about it. And all this is in my book, Choosing the Light, Dark Secrets of the Oklahoma City Bombing. And that's found on lightonconspiracies.com/Cody for anybody who might want the book. But yeah, Waco began, and I'm going to tell you what Ron Cole told me. Now, Ron Cole was a Branch Davidian who I met later after all this happened, and he told me what I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to add a bunch of frills or make stuff up. I'm just going to tell you what he told me happened there. And it's very different from what the government said on the state-controlled media here. But Ron Cole was friends with David Koresh. David Koresh was the leader of the Branch Davidian compound there. And his mother had gotten sick. And this was just before Waco began on February 28th of 93. And Ron Cole flew down to Florida to take care of his sick mom. And so while he was down there, the feds, the ATF, hit the Branch Davidian compound. And Ron Cole saw a little news blurb about it because a gunfight erupted and there were 4 ATF agents killed in this gun battle. And so he flew immediately back to Waco. And when he got there, the feds had set a perimeter up around the Branch Davidian compound and wouldn't let anyone in or out. And while he was down there in Florida at his sick mom, the minute he saw that on the news that there was some kind of a gunfight going on, he called the Branch Davidian compound, and he called David Koresh. By this time, David Koresh had been shot, and he asked him what happened. And he told me that Koresh told him that they were all sitting around in the Branch Davidian compound on that day, February 28th, and up pulled some trucks with cattle trailers behind them. And the ATF agents were back there in those cattle trailers hiding. So when these trucks pulled up in front of the compound, the compound dogs started running out and barking at them. And Koresh said the ATF agents shot the dogs. And then they turned their guns on the Branch Davidian compound and just opened up on them. No warrant, no nothing, just started shooting them. So the Branch Davidians returned fire, and the gunfight ensued. Well, then the phone lines were cut, and Ron Cole then flew back up there, and he got to Waco, and he got there, and the perimeter had been set around the building. And so there were several Branch Davidians that were not in the compound on February 28th when the gunfight started. Some of them were in town shopping and getting supplies and stuff. And so they all gathered together at this perimeter, and they got up on a spot where they could see the Branch Davidian compound because they all cared, what was going on. And they set up a camp. And so night after night, Madeline, Ron Cole told me, he said they sat with binoculars and little telescopes and stuff, and they were trying to watch to see what was happening. And every night, they said that they saw these they were black helicopters. They were unmarked. They had no lights, no markings of any kind, flat black. And they would circle the Branch Davidian compound. And then they would see streaks of light, orange, green, red, different colors. And none of the civilians there, Ron Cole, none of them knew what was going on. They didn't know. And they said, man, we wish we had some night vision. You know, one night they were sitting around going, oh, I wish we had some night vision. Look at this. I came walking up to them and said, I've got some night vision. You know, I was in the military in Iraq, you know, there's some night vision. So they all looked at them and they said, well, where are all those streaks? And they were tracers out of M60 machine guns. And the black helicopters were flying around the Branch Davidian compound at night, machine gunning them up. And they said, well, who are you? How do you know all this? And he said, my name's Timothy McVeigh. And so Tim McVeigh was there with Ron Cole and the other Branch Davidians watching what the U.S. government was really doing. And they said, why are they doing it? And he said, it's a standard Delta Force or Special Forces tactic. When you have a bunch of insurgents holed up in a structure and you have a perimeter around them, it's standard procedure to fire on the top levels of the building to drive any snipers that may be there downwards.
Oh, wow.
Because when the snipers are down on the lower grounds, Madeline, they can't shoot as far, which allows you to collapse the perimeter and get closer to the building. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that was a standard tactic. It's a military tactic. And then later on, 50 some odd days later, you know, the official story was, you know, that the ATF pulled up in front of the Branch Davidian compound, and the Branch Davidians started shooting at the poor innocent feds, you know, for no reason. And that was a government story. And then they had to, you know, there was a fire that was started on the very last day, and it was one of the windiest days out of the whole month. And, you know, the fire burned down the compound. And then what happened was, see, that fire covered up all the evidence of the dead bodies that had been machine gunned up. And so there's a whole lot to this story. There were two Texas Rangers who, they were brothers, and they went to investigate after that thing burned down, and the feds tried to kick them out. And they said, no, you're not pulling jurisdiction on us. You know, we're Texas Rangers. We have a right to be here to investigate this crime on our soil. And they saw the Branch Davidian doors. There were two, basically 4x8 steel doors on the front of that compound. And when it got to trial, the Branch Davidians claimed, you know, the ATF just came up and started shooting at them. So they wanted to see where the bullet holes were in these steel doors, if they were coming from the inside out or outside in or what. And so the defense for the Branch Davidians subpoenaed those two doors. And you know what the ATF said?
What?
That the doors were lost in the evidence room.
How do you lose doors? Big steel doors.
Two 4x8 steel doors. Now, so here's the next thing they did. The defense said, well, we can't get the doors. So now we're going to go to the witnesses who saw the doors, which were these two Texas Rangers. And they had walked around in the ashes and stuff and claimed that they saw these doors and that all the bullet holes were coming from the outside in, which would prove the Branch Davidians did not fire first. They were just defending themselves. And the feds couldn't have that. So here's what happened. Those both brothers, these Texas Rangers, they were well respected. I've got their names and stuff in this book. Suddenly, child pornography appeared on their laptops now.
Oh, no.
And so since they had been subpoenaed, okay, to testify at a criminal trial, there's a rule saying that if you're under investigation for some kind of crime or felony or something, that you can't testify. And that was the way the feds they planted child pornography on their laptops so they wouldn't be witnesses. That way no one could prove which way the bullets came, see? So this is how they cover up the evidence of the trial. And then later on, the two Texas Rangers filed a lawsuit against the federal government, and they won it. It was years later, and they got their names exonerated and everything. But this is the kind of dirty stuff that the feds pull, and they do it regularly over and over and over, whether it's Oklahoma City, Waco, 9/11, it goes on and on.
But by the time they had cleared their names, everybody's moved on to the next updated tragedy.
Right.
And they don't go back and revisit the situation and update their knowledge of what really happened.
So they all move on, and the press is controlled, and everything's controlled. And then you remember, I don't know if you watched any of the TV back then in '93, but during the Waco Branch Davidian standoff, they'd have FBI spokesman, ATF spokesman said this and that and the other, and that's all you saw.
Right. Why were they targeting the Branch Davidians in the first place?
Well, that's what a lot of people are asking. They were going to a lot of gun shows and selling guns and stuff, and plus they're a Christian fundamentalist group, and they hated the government, basically.
There's the bingo.
The feds said that they had meth labs in there and everything, and that was just a way to lie to Governor Ann Richardson, to violate the Posse Comitatus Act. That act states that you can't use military equipment in law enforcement, but they needed choppers and they needed tanks off of Fort Hood, Texas. Those tanks that started the fire that day, which burned through the whole compound, those tanks came from Fort Hood, Texas, and they had to get Ann Richardson, the governor's approval, so they lied to her and told her that David Kress was a pedophile and they had meth labs and all. And Ron Cole assured me that nothing could be further from the truth. The children loved David Koresh and thought he was good, and they never had any meth labs or any drugs of any kind around that. They were Christians.
Didn't they use sarin gas on them as well? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, they just manufactured spin. They did the same thing in the Oklahoma City bombing. In this book, we have story after story, detail after detail of how they lied, how they murdered witnesses afterwards, like Oklahoma City police officer Randy Yeeke, and so forth. It just goes on and on and on, the cover-ups and the lies. But anyway, basically at Waco, that's the story that was told me by Ron Cole, who was there. And it's very, very different from the story that we all hear out here in the media and the crap that goes in our history books. And these young millennial children, Madeline, that were born after 9/11, 2001, they're 18, 19 years old now. They're being taught lies in our history books.
Mm-hmm.
They're being taught the official version that the government said happened. And it's not true.
It's not. I read The Secret Terrorist. This is a little book that I think everybody should read. It's from Bill Hughes, and there is a section here on Waco as well. And it's quite shocking what their motivations are. They don't want people who go against the government. They don't want Christian factions. They don't want people who are well armed and believe in the Second Amendment. And they use Waco, or the Branch Davidians, as a great example for what the government will do to you if you dare speak out or go off on your own. And these children were homeschooled. And they were learning the Constitution. They were learning the importance of the Second Amendment. And the ATF, the government, doesn't want that.
No, they don't. They want you to believe they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And every time you get one little stubbed toe, don't be self-reliant.
Mm-hmm.
And don't take care of things yourself. Every time you get one little stubbed toe, you whine and run to the government. That's what they want, is people that are dependent, people that are weak, people that are disempowered, people that are fragmented through fear, that if they speak out or say anything different from the party line, they'll be hit and attacked. So
I never thought I'd say this, but poor Timothy McVeigh, he never stood a chance. His hands were dirty in a number of different situations, and he was a liability for the government. No wonder they took him out so quickly.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know. In this book, we have detailed a whole bunch of stuff, but McVeigh saw what they did at Waco, and before that, he had been an M1A1 Abrams tank commander in Desert Storm. Terry Nichols was his platoon commander over there, and the Desert Storm Iraq War was in January 1991. But when McVeigh got his anthrax shots, like everybody did, everyone got their standard course of shots before you go in theater. He had been covertly injected with a little microchip, an RFID chip. That's a radio frequency ID chip.
Mm.
And the Pentagon had been experimenting with putting chips in dog tags. A lot of times when there's a battle and there's explosions, like the Russian rockets or whatever go off, and there's body parts everywhere, as a way to find bodies on a battlefield. So they put one of these covertly in his buttocks, as they did several other people without their knowledge. They use them as guinea pigs. It's part of a program from Lockheed Martin. It was called the BEAST system. That stands for Battle Engagement Area Simulator Tracker. And it was a way to use satellites from space to read the location of equipment and or personnel in a real-time war situation. They were testing this technology in Iraq in Desert Storm 1, just like they tested the new depleted uranium Sabot rounds. They call them the silver bullets. Those are the M1A1 tank buster rounds that killed with pure kinetic energy rather than explosives. And so that was the first time they used depleted uranium in that war. But anyway, McVeigh was tested, and then when he got back to the States, the protein code on his chip failed, and he got a big red sore on his butt, and he had it removed. And we know this because he wrote his sister Jennifer letters. Now, see, this is stuff that doesn't come out in the media. You know, McVeigh was the fall guy for the Oklahoma City bombing, so they don't tell you all this stuff.
Right.
They also don't tell you that when he got back from Desert Storm, he applied to be in the Special Forces, and they do a standard battery of psychological tests. And so there were hundreds of people in the Special Forces class, but the CIA went in there and read the test results, and they picked Tim McVeigh and about 10 other guys, and they had a secret covert meeting with them. And they said, look, we want to make you guys assets and or agents for the CIA. We want you to blow up buildings and sell dope and assassinate people and so forth. You're going to be black operators. But we want you to continue your training in the Special Forces without their knowledge, of course. And go ahead and graduate and be a Green Beret. And then we want you to use your front, you know, your job in the Army as a front for us. And so he didn't want to do that. And he quit. And that's when he went to Calspan up in Buffalo, New York, which was that defense contractor up there, to become a security guard. And we know all this. I have actual copies, you know, reproductions of the letters he wrote to his sister Jennifer, telling her, you know, about the CIA trying to recruit him at Fort Bragg. And so you have excerpts of those in this book too. So this book's 700 pages. It's highly detailed. It's got a lot of dates, names, times, places, so forth. But there's a lot of stuff like this, Madeline, that people don't commonly hear.
Mm-hmm.
All they hear in the history books and what they see on TV is the state-approved propaganda. And we are heavily propagandized and heavily lied to in our media. It's pervasive, it's systemic and endemic. And it's time now for people to wake up and just don't believe all these stories like the government story of Waco or the government story of Oklahoma City or what the telecoms are saying about 5G. It's time to do your own research It's time for people to step up to the plate and take responsibility for what's going on in our world.
And that's why we have to go back and dissect these individual events so that we can take a look at the patterns. That's what you and Ollie Dammegard are so brilliant at, because these things are not singular events. They're still happening today.
Exactly. And a lot of these, the Parkland school shooting, Sandy Hook, when you start digging into these things, instead of just blindly accepting the state-controlled media and shadow government lies about them, you'll find that they are false flags and that the evidence simply does not add up. The cover story that you're being told that sounds so good at first glance simply doesn't add up. It's not true. So we need to start doing more of our own research and looking at these historical events, because those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Will you repeat again where people can find you, where they can order your book? And I will, of course, include it in the description box.
Yeah, the book is called Choosing the Light, Dark Secrets of the Oklahoma City Bombing. 700-page book. It's found at Ole Dammegard's website, lightonconspiracies.com/Cody. And on his website over there in Europe, I have a website here in the States, but it's been hit by the deep state and shut down and tampered with. PayPal shut down, donation buttons hit. It's been sabotaged so much we don't even trust the integrity of the data in it. So we just send everyone over to Europe to that website. But Ole also has a newsletter that goes on once a month.
Oh, great.
It keeps people informed of some of the new stuff. A lot of it's overseas in Europe, and they won't talk about any of it here on this controlled American mainstream media. But he's got a vault. If you sign up for that newsletter, it's 30 years worth of research from around the world. Files, pictures, all kinds of evidence. This is a really good research tool for anybody who's interested in that kind of thing.
Well, that's fantastic. I'll go sign up for that today, actually. I think it's not a bad thing, Americans, for you to be aware of world history, because we're kind of limited here. China's not the only one filtering the information its citizens receive.
That's exactly right.
All right. So how's your headache before we wrap it up? How are you doing right now? Is it getting any better?
No, it's getting a little bit worse because it's towards the end of the day and we've already done several interviews today.
Okay. Well, let's end on a spiritual note, and I will let you know. Give us 1 or 2 tips you feel individuals can do on a spiritual level to protect themselves from the deep state, the electronic weapons that are used against us. What are your tips for that?
Well, yeah, that's a big subject.
I know.
We get asked around the world is, that people go, Cody, I'm just a truck driver. I'm just a waitress or something. I'm nobody. I'm just a regular person trying to raise a family, and what can we do against this big new world order and 5G and all of this organized deception in the media? And we tell them, just hold the light, hold it at your own level, in your own life. Speak the truth, stand up for the truth, question. Don't always just accept whatever they say on the 5 o'clock news, and hold that light, and hold integrity. And more people, if enough of us do that, this world will change for the better. And, there's a lot of things you can do standing up to the microwave. Like me, I got rid of my cell phone. I just don't use one anymore. And there's ways to get around it. I'm talking to you on a hard line, landline thing now. But there's a lot of people tell me, oh, get rid of your cell phone. They go, oh, my God, I couldn't do that, But there's a lot of ways to get around it, but they get you locked in this electronic fence thing, and they get you dependent on these devices to where you think that you can't operate without them. And then they have a built-in ready-made market system, and you're locked in, and they got ready-made customers. And then wait for the new iPhone 8, the iPhone 9, the new. And they just keep you locked in this chain. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, and it's too big a question. I could talk for an hour on things on how to protect yourself from microwave attacks. You know, a lot of people I know, Madeline, they keep a bare minimum amount of money in the bank, pay bills and car payments and stuff, and then they have their own savings, you know, in gold and silver coin that are buried somewhere or put up. There's preppers that, you know, have 3 months of food and water and medicine for their family. Some children have diabetes and so forth, and so there's a lot of things you can do to resist this new world order instead of just being dependent. Don't be dependent on your information through the media. You know, hunt, search, look. You know, the internet, even though it's being censored a lot, still has a lot of good research capabilities.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
So, and share with your friends. You know, if you see something weird or you like this video here, we're doing this thing here. You say, hey, you know, this guy's trying to open people's mind up. Madeline's trying to open people's mind up about 5G. Listen to what he says and then go check it out. See if I'm full of bullshit or not. See for yourself and check it, because this stuff is coming and it's going to affect us and our children.
Yes, it is. So do you hear that, viewers? Share, share, share with everyone you know. You have my permission to post this video on your Facebook, your Twitter, wherever. The most important thing is that we get the information out there. None of my stuff is copyrighted, so please share it, Will. Any parting words?
Oh, I'd just like to say that we're all brothers and sisters in the light. You know, we're two-legged human beings on the earth. We're one of many of God's creatures on this earth. Whatever religion you believe or whatever, there's a creative principle. There's a creative force of creation that runs through all life. And it's that we need to connect to. It's our connection to this divine source. Whatever name you want to call it, that's not the point. Buddha, Allah, God, Jesus, whatever. That's not the point. We're not talking about religion here. We're talking about spirituality and spiritual science. Connect to this higher divine creative force. That's where you find the light and the truth. Not on the banker-controlled mainstream media and all of this crap they're putting out on the news. And hold that connection, because the New World Order has to disempower us spiritually. It has to get us all arguing over little things and fighting each other, divide and conquer, so they can secretly spray their geoengineering chemtrails and do all this 5G stuff behind our backs. It's just time to wake up and hold that light and keep that connection to your spiritual heritage, because we are spiritual beings of light, and we're all here for a reason. We have to discover what that reason is. And if you want to stand with the dark ones, go stand with them. If you want to stand with us and the light, you can stand with us, because this is a spiritual battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness.
Absolutely.
And it's right here, right now on the earth.
Absolutely. It's amazing how much courage that light will give you. You will find cojones you didn't even know you had.
Exactly. Yep.
So, and with that, I thank you, my friend. I know you've been so busy and you haven't felt well today, but I want to thank you. I appreciate so much you spending time with us today, giving us your expertise. I will keep in touch with you. Send me those pictures and then we'll get them out there.
Okay, and when you're done, send me a link and I'll share it with our other guys.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Cody.
Okay, thanks, Madeline. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. That was Cody Snodgres. I will post all his information in the description box. Like, subscribe. Please share this video. Every time you like and subscribe, we go higher up on the search engines, and that's really important, especially with the banning that's happening. And he was talking about them rolling back the numbers. It happens all the time. It happens to my videos as well. So please share this information. You can find me at galacticstoryteller.com. My email is galacticstoryteller@gmail.com. gmail.com. For those of you that want an appointment, I get emails asking about that. Go to my webpage. On the calendar, you'll be able to make an appointment so we can do a consultation reading there. I will see you guys in the next video. You guys take care.